Thanks for joining us in our discussion about who is Jesus Christ. This is our last video in this section about Jesus Christ today. And in this video, we're going to talk about one of the greatest things that Jesus is doing right now. Jesus is preparing a place for us. It was a sad day when Jesus left his friends and his disciples, but he had a very clear message for them. We read in John 14, the first 3 verses, "Let not your heart be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also." Jesus is preparing a place for us. Now that might sound familiar to you. If you ask most Christians what Jesus was doing right now, this might be the most common response that you get. Right there in verse 3 of John 14, I go to prepare a place for you. The rest of that verse is a little bit more confusing for people. Jesus says, I will come again. Well, that makes sense. But then he says, and will take you to myself. I think that part of the verse confuses people. And they think that Jesus is in heaven preparing a place for us there, and he's going to come get us and take us there. But that's not what the Bible teaches. Jesus himself in the Lord's Prayer says something completely different. Matthew 6, verses 9 and 10, he says, "Pray then like this, Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven." The kingdom that Jesus is preparing for us is going to be here on earth. Jesus will return to earth and establish his kingdom on the earth. This is a common theme in the Bible, with the kingdom on the earth and its capital in Jerusalem. The next series of videos is about Christ, the future king and judge. You can get much more information about this topic there. Let's take a look a little closer at what Jesus is saying in John 14. He says, "In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also." The first thing that strikes me in this sentence is where it says, "in my Father's house." What does he mean when Jesus says, "in my Father's house"? There's a famous story about Jesus in John chapter 2. John 2, 13 to 16. The Passover of the Jews was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple, he found those who were selling oxen and sheep and pigeons, and the money changers sitting there. And making a whip of cords, he drove them all out of the temple with the sheep and the oxen. And he poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And he told those who sold the pigeons, "Take these things away. Do not make my Father's house a house of trade." You see, Jesus often referred to the temple as his Father's house. And that makes sense. Now, Jesus is busy preparing the temple. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Think about what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 6, verse 19, where he says, "Do you not know that your body is a temple?" Jesus is preparing a temple. Your body is a temple. We're right back to the same thought that I've been sharing in all of these videos. Right now, Jesus is preparing us to be a spiritual people. Jesus is working with us to transform our minds from fleshly minds to spiritual minds. You see the pattern here? We keep coming back to the same point. We talked about Christ working in our lives by developing our characters to be more like his character, transforming us through the power of the Word of God and interactions with others, guided by the angels, to reduce the mind of the flesh and to grow the mind of the Spirit. We talked about Christ interceding for us by being a mediator between our two minds, the mind of the flesh and the mind of the Spirit, and helping us to choose a spiritual life. And now we see the idea of Christ preparing a place for us is the exact same concept. Christ wants us to be a part of his Father's house, the kingdom here on earth. And he's creating in us a new creation, a spiritual creation. Christ prepares us for the world to come by transforming our fleshly minds into spiritual minds. But only if you want him to.